Dangerous rainfall across Australia's north expected for the next week, and a powerful tropical cyclone threatening the Queensland coastline. Got a lot to get through for your January 16th cyclone forecast update from Force 13 AU. If you are brand new here, please do consider subscribing. We're getting close on 12,000 subscribers. Please do leave a like on the video while you're at it if you do end up enjoying it. But we've got some good news on the tropical low over the Northern Territory. However, it is still expected to dump an incredible, maybe even a record amount of rainfall across locations in the Northern Territory and also into Western Australia and Queensland. And we've also got a developing severe tropical cyclone threat for central Queensland. Townsville could be pumped with a major tropical cyclone next week and into next weekend. So we're going to be taking a look at the national picture right now. You can see hot conditions remain across the nation's west. It's going to be very hot in Perth today with a maximum heat index of 45 degrees Celsius combined with that humidity. So stay cool over there. Rain and storms extending across the nation's north. In fact, there could be some very heavy rainfall across coastal areas around the Gulf of Carpentaria and also on the Bonaparte Gulf, where a further 300 millimetres could fall in some locations today. Rain for Cairns and surrounding areas, and also rain for Brisbane and extending down towards the Gold Coast and even as far south as Sydney. Storms will start to develop across central Victoria and New South Wales, and showers and storms could also develop across northern Tasmania tonight with the passage of a cold front and low pressure system, which is expected to spark another round of severe weather. So here's a look at the updated cyclone chances. We've got a high 90% chance of development on the tropical cyclone in the Indian Ocean. That's very likely to form now and get the next name on the Australian naming list of Kirrily. I've completely dropped the chances on the one over the Northern Territory. I don't foresee how that's going to become a fully fledged tropical cyclone over the coming week or so. It's really unlikely at this time unless it somehow gets itself over water again, but it's moved further inland, so I'm not sold on that. Now a 50% chance of development on that Coral Sea storm, which is one that we need to be watching very closely because that is looking like it could be a powerful storm. So first off, on the rainfall run, you can see severe storms extending across Tasmania, Victoria and into New South Wales until about Thursday. The rainfall should actually start to ease off for coastal parts of the Northern Territory by around Wednesday or Thursday, but remaining very heavy inland in the Northern Territory until about middle of the next weekend, when the rain should finally start to ease off for locations north of Tennant Creek and around Katherine and Darwin. And then as the storm moves inland by next Monday and Tuesday, it will really start to peter off. But still, a lot of rainfall and a lot of thunderstorms expected across South Australia as that severe tropical cyclone lines up to blast Townsville and surrounding areas by around next Wednesday or Thursday. So we need to be watching out for that very closely because it's getting more and more model support, and it's actually a likely situation to occur now. So we're looking at the temperature forecast. You can see hot conditions across the nation's west and centre. However, that's very normal for this time of the year. It will get especially hot into early next weekend. Again, Perth could see up to 40 degrees Celsius surrounding Perth on next Saturday, and also some hot conditions driven south by those tropical lows, or that tropical low moving through the Northern Territory, which will bring some very hot conditions across Western Australia and parts of South Australia as well. And then as that other cyclone moves in through Queensland in around a week's time, you can also see hot conditions developing across central New South Wales and Queensland. But again, that's relatively uncertain considering a lot of that is dependent on how that tropical cyclone maneuvers itself. So taking a look at the wind forecast, we're looking at the tropics right now. You can see 3 individual tropical lows, or tropical cyclones actually, as per the Access G3 forecast model. We've got the one in the Indian Ocean, which gets reasonably powerful up to Category 2 status, the one across the central Northern Territory, which does get cyclone force winds, but I don't think it will qualify to be named as a tropical cyclone because of the Bureau of Meteorology's silly naming regulations. And then the one in the Coral Sea, which is the most powerful out of all the 3, that one gets up towards Category 4 status by next Tuesday, and you can see as it lines up the Queensland coastline north of Hamilton Island, it absolutely rockets into the coastline, a very powerful tropical cyclone, Category 4 status, and is one that we need to be watching very closely because it is a significant threat, that's for sure. Here's a look at the satellite imagery across the nation. You can see that tropical low across the Northern Territory nicely spinning itself up, and some very nice thunderstorms streaming in around the northern side of the system. It is still dropping a pretty heavy total of rainfall, and we're going to be breaking that down in the next 10 minutes or so, so stick around for that. But it has moved further inland, which is good news for Darwin and surrounds, and it looks like the cyclone or the tropical low might actually not have access to the fuel required to dump record amounts of rainfall. But we'll get into that and break that down across the next 10 minutes, so stick around. We will talk about this tropical low up in the Northern Territory first, and then we're going to take a look at the other tropical cyclones around the nation, and then we'll briefly touch on the severe weather threat for southern Australia, because it is a significant threat over the coming couple of days. So skip around to what parts of the video best suit your forecast needs, and sit back and enjoy. But we're taking a look at the rainfall picture up now in the northern parts of the Northern Territory. You can see quite a lot of rainfall still streaming in those thunderstorms and thunderstorm bands north of Melville Island, then into the Northern Territory around the Kakadu region, and also around the Darwin region as well. Now, the rain seems to have eased off there, but they've still had around 450 millimeters so far from this tropical low, and it looks like the worst of the rainfall is going to be where these big thunderclouds are. You can see up across the north and also around parts of the Northern Territory. I believe that's near Wave Hill, and maybe not as far inland as Tennant Creek yet, but it is still a lot of thunderstorm activity around the centre of the tropical low right now. It's a lot further inland than what we initially thought. We were actually expecting the tropical low to hover itself around Katherine, or between Katherine and Daly River actually, but it's now situated about here. Where's that? About Victoria River Downs, that station through there. And it is, as I said, substantially further inland than what we were expecting, which means it's not going to have access to the ocean as a fuel source to drive its thunderstorm activity, which means it's very likely that it won't get much stronger than how it is now, and it will struggle to fire more convection, more thunderstorm activity than what it actually has now, which means the rainfall threat actually is looking a lot better than what we were initially expecting. That's not to say that we won't be seeing any more rainfall. We could definitely be seeing a substantial amount more rainfall on the bottom part coastline, especially between Colombo and up towards Darwin. There's the chance that we could see another 300 millimeters there. I think Darwin's got up to 100 millimeters coming their way today. So the rainfall threat has not eased off, and it won't be easing off until at least Wednesday, I would say. It gets really quite nasty tonight, and then into tomorrow night as well. It just slowly starts to ease off into Wednesday and then into Thursday as this tropical low pulls itself further into the Northern Territory. But I mean, you're still looking at the on and off thunderstorm chances around Darwin and those sort of areas, so they could still drop quite a lot of rainfall. The real rainfall threat will remain in the central Northern Territory, where you're looking at half a year's to a year's worth of rainfall for some locations, which, once again, it's not completely unheard of for the Australian tropics, but it is a huge amount of rainfall, and it will push rivers beyond their moderate to major flooding levels, and there will be some rivers that inevitably break their flood records from this tropical low dropping its incredible amount of rainfall. And it does stall until about Saturday, so 4 or 5 days of stalling. That's comparable to how long Cyclone Jasper stalled, and that got the chance to dump 2,200 millimeters of rain across some locations. So as this tropical low moves across the Northern Territory, there's nothing stopping this from dropping in 1 or 2 locations up to 1,000 millimeters of rain. You can see over the next 5 days a very widespread swathe of more than 500 millimeters in this pink, and also 1 or 2 isolated spots approaching 850 millimeters around, or once again around Victoria Creek Downs, between Katherine down towards Wave Hill and so forth. That's sort of where the bulk of the rainfall is expected, and all the rivers in this area will inevitably flood as a result of this tropical cyclone, or tropical low actually. The chance of this becoming a tropical cyclone or getting tropical cyclone equivalent winds over land is actually there, believe it or not. There is the shot that this tropical low gets to tropical cyclone status over land, believe it or not. In fact, it actually does on Sunday as per the forecast models. The reason why this won't pick up a name is because it doesn't qualify for the Bureau of Meteorology's 3 out of 4 quadrants of the cyclone needing to have 34 knot winds or higher, which is what the Bureau of Meteorology needs to classify it as a tropical cyclone. In my opinion, it's a stupid rule, but it does prevent useless systems from getting named. So I guess it's not a bad rule, but time and time again, we've seen storms miss out on names, and people just not taking tropical lows seriously because they don't have the cyclone tag. This is a very dangerous system, and in some cases this system here would be more dangerous than a category 3 severe tropical cyclone because of the amount of rainfall that it is expected to drop. So if you live in the path of this cyclone and you are or tropical low, and the Bureau of Meteorology is issuing warnings or watches for your location, make sure you're taking them very seriously, because this is a serious storm threat. And as it moves into Western Australia, you can see it strengthens a little bit as well because of the brown ocean effect, which I've I've explained in previous videos, but it drops an incredible amount of rainfall. You're talking 50 millimeters an hour for some locations across the course of a day, but at this point, it's really moving along with some speed into Wednesday and Thursday, basically paralleling the West Australian coastline. And this is quite an interesting forecast, considering it's very rare you see tropical lows hold themselves together for 10 days across Australia. It's unheard of it anywhere else across the world, but across Australia it is possible, but it is a very weird forecast nonetheless. The GFS actually is still calling for this tropical cyclone to parallel the West Australian coastline, so I'm actually inclined to go back to our initial forecast stating that it is now likely for this tropical cyclone 2 or tropical low to parallel the WA coastline and move into West Australia once again from the Northern Territory early into next week. So we're back on the original forecast, which is interesting considering I basically rubbed those chances off when we saw all the models trend towards the Queensland passage, but it looks like the situation for Queensland is a lot better now. We're no longer looking out for a meter's worth of rainfall in Queensland. We're probably going to see 200 to 300 millimeters, worst case scenario, along the Gulf of Carpentaria coastline and around the Daintree rainforest, and then inland it's just going to be thunderstorms, so 50 to 100 millimeters, worst case scenario, which could still cause flooding nonetheless, but it's a far better situation than 1,000 millimeters to what we were initially expecting. So that is some good news there. And you can see next Monday and Tuesday it moves offshore as a tropical cyclone into the Indian Ocean, and I am surprised the GFS doesn't absolutely blow this system up in terms of intensity. The conditions across Western Australian waters are primed for rapid intensification from these tropical cyclones. So I'm actually, shocked that this doesn't blow the tropical cyclone up. Wind shear must be quite hostile for this tropical cyclone, but if it does get itself over the Indian Ocean, it could definitely go boom in terms of intensification. Now, I'm sure a couple of you have already seen the tropical low through here, which I actually haven't cited when I was researching this video. Something does seem to spin itself up next weekend in the Gulf of Carpentaria very briefly and makes landfall around Baroola as a tropical cyclone. Actually as a Category 1 strength tropical cyclone. Now, I'm not sure. It's a rapidly intensifying system by the looks of the pressure dropping quite rapidly here. It actually, drops 10 millibars in about 12 hours. So as it makes a landfall on this sort of island chain outside of Baroola and MacArthur Mine, you're looking at something, around Robinson River, actually. I think that's a more significant population centre. It's a significant tropical cyclone, probably of Category 2 proportions, just looking at that pressure there. But I'm not sure, because this is just the first run that I've seen with this tropical cyclone, so I'm not sure what to comment on this system. I don't think that's going to happen, but we will watch this very closely. If it sticks around for another couple of days, then it's a fighting chance of developing. Now, as promised, we're going to take a look at the Queensland situation, because this is something that we need to be watching out for very closely, that's for sure. A powerful tropical cyclone is set to develop next Friday and into Saturday in the Solomon Sea, south of the Solomon Islands, in a very similar vein to how Tropical Cyclone Jasper developed. It's going to be a very broad system by the looks of things. It wraps itself up and actually tightens itself up next Sunday and into Monday, and as it moves into the Coral Sea, it rapidly intensifies. You can see dropping millibars at a rate of knots as it moves towards the Queensland coastline. You can see next Tuesday and into Wednesday, it's already approaching Category 3, Category 4 status, with winds of around 80 knots peak. Or peak winds of around 80 knots, and then pressure in the mid 940s by the looks of things as it makes a landfall or heads for a landfall around Ayr, south of Townsville. And actually it does make landfall on Ayr, driving the worst winds ashore on Bowen next Wednesday morning. So it's a strong tropical cyclone as it does this. Now, it's not concerning considering the fact that we haven't seen this. We've got this forecast now from a lot of models. The concerning fact is that the certainty for this system is now actually going through the roof. There's a lot more forecast models on board with this situation. You can see the Eastern WF model, which is another very reliable forecast model, is calling for a direct hit on Mackay on Thursday, so a very similar time and also a very similar place as well, considering that's about 10 days out. I believe the GFS model hasn't fully picked up on it yet. Oh no, it actually has, so that's even more concerning considering the GFS is now on board with this system. But yesterday we only had the Axis G3 model on board with this. Now we've got all three major forecast models in the Australian region on board with this tropical cyclone becoming a major system as it approaches the Queensland coastline. And the GFS is actually calling for a very worrying scenario where it's offshore from Rockhampton and stalling as well. It looks like it's about to swing inland and make a landfall. I'd extrapolate that and say on Rockhampton in about 12 days time, but it's uncomfortably close to Brisbane. So expect a very similar situation and quite a similar forecast to Cyclone Jasper of just a month and a half ago. And we will be tracking this. We will be giving lots of coverage on the Force 13 AU channel to make sure everyone is safe and prepared from this tropical cyclone. But that is a very worrying forecast and a very worrying picture to be staring down the barrel of, considering we've now got 3 major forecast models on board with it, and I believe a 4th if you include the Icon model, because towards the end of their 5-day forecast period, you're still seeing this strengthening tropical cyclone in the Coral Sea. Probably, definitely heading for Queensland at this time. So that's a concerning forecast to have. But the Access G3 model, definitely the most bullish on this system. But once again, conditions are there for this tropical cyclone. The sea surface temperatures through the Coral Sea, 30 degrees Celsius. So it is bath water. It is very warm water for a tropical cyclone to move through. And it could get up to a very strong intensity as it approaches anywhere basically north of Mackay. If I was to make a prediction on this tropical cyclone, I would say the most likely landfall point is between Townsville and Mackay, but there's a chance of a landfall between Mackay and Rockhampton, and also a chance of landfall north of Townsville up towards Cairns. There's a lot of uncertainty still with this system, considering how far out it is. It's a 10-day forecast at least away, but it is a worrying forecast in the sense that we've now got a lot more model support. And the initial tropical low has actually already formed. You can see the tropical low around Willis Island area right now, and it is firing some thunderstorm activity to the north of it, and it's also a rotating system. So we've already got this tropical low starting to form already, which is a little bit concerning in the sense that considering there's model support, the forecast models tend to do really well when they have an initial tropical low to base their forecast off. So there's pretty good certainty with this tropical cyclone, and I would give it at least a 50-50 shot of becoming a tropical cyclone in the next 10 days, and also a pretty good chance of impacting the Queensland coastline at some point. Now, if you've got any questions on this system, please do leave them in the comment section down below, and I will attempt to address them in the next video, which won't be until Thursday, because I am going on a quick fishing trip to Rottnest Island, just offshore from Perth, and I will be back on Thursday with video coverage on these systems, so there won't be any video tomorrow, which I don't feel like is the worst thing, considering there's really not too much going on right now. At least the tropical low threat in the Northern Territory has since eased off, and it's not going to be until a couple more days until we get a really good idea on what the Coral Sea system is going to do. Now, before I do sign this video off, we're going to take a look at the thunderstorm situation today, tomorrow, and into Thursday morning for Victoria, New South Wales, South Australia, and Tasmania. You can see tonight they really do start to develop, but they're really only in sort of western Victoria and extreme eastern Victoria as well, and they look like pulse thunderstorms. They don't look like organised squall activities, so they will be hit and miss. They will deliver your typical damaging winds, your typical heavy rainfall, and maybe small hailstones in 1 or 2 spots, but we're probably looking at non-severe thunderstorms here. It's until Wednesday morning when we start to see these severe thunderstorms organise into a squall line that impact the Melbourne metropolitan area around sort of 6 a.m. Wednesday or tomorrow morning, so rush hour. Make sure you're driving safely on the roads, because very heavy rainfall is possible, damaging winds, and also some small hailstones as well for the Melbourne metropolitan area. And in northern Tasmania as well, you can be seeing a bit of rainfall there that will extend into Hobart by around early afternoon. And then you'll see these pulse thunderstorms fire up behind this sort of cold front, I believe it is. It's a weird sort of front, maybe just a trough line actually moving through New South Wales and Victoria. And you'll see some thunderstorms fire before it and also behind it by the looks of things. But again, not looking like they're going to be too severe in New South Wales. Maybe 1 or 2 storms could go severe with damaging winds and heavy rainfall, but not the worst case scenario, put it that way. And then Thursday afternoon, it looks like we start to see those thunderstorms move into the northern parts of New South Wales and southern Queensland, and then they become associated with all the tropical activity, and you're going to see a lot of pulse thunderstorms north of the Tropic of Capricorn for basically Thursday until maybe early next week, where it'll be pretty consistent thunderstorm activity for around 10 days. And these storms could deliver a little bit of rainfall as well. In 1 or 2 locations in the middle of the desert, you could pick up to 50 millimeters of rain. Once again, pulse thunderstorms, so very much hit and miss. There'll be locations that pick up 100 millimeters and locations 5 kilometers down the road that pick up absolutely nothing. So make sure you're staying safe as well in these thunderstorms, not going outside if there's lightning around or damaging winds around, and also if you are under a flood warning or a flood watch, you're not going near rivers that are bound to flood or forecast to flood, because there's going to be a lot of flooding across the Northern Territory, the Kimberley, and also parts of far north Queensland over the next 10 days with this incredible amount of rainfall that's expected to fall. You can see up to 500 millimeters in a lot of locations around around Argyle and Kununurra in Western Australia, and then also extending across to Fitzroy Cross Crossing and Halls Creek. You're seeing locations get to 250 to 300 millimeters as well. So a lot of rainfall is expected across a lot of locations. But that's about all from me. Make sure you're staying safe and staying weather-wise as well. Stay up to date with the Bureau of Meteorology and also stay up to date with the Force 13 AU channel. It's been a pleasure giving you the weather forecast, and I'll be back on Thursday with the latest coverage. But that's all from me, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.
Thank you for watching our content this update. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe to get more updates covering all things weather and geophysics impacting Australia and the Oceania region. Subscribe to our other channels for more content from across the network, and be sure to check out our website where you can find free access to floater and radar imagery and articles on everything weather and much more. If you wish to support us directly, you can purchase some of our merchandise. We have a wide variety of clothing and homeware, or you could become an Ultimate Fan, which is the best way to directly support us, granting you some sweet perks and offers, including features in our custom storm animations, live streams, and much more.